Hey, what up, everyone? This is Fu Show with Illustrious Media. Hope you have a great afternoon. So it's a very nice day out. It is late September, and we're probably not going to get too many of these left in the year, in the Northeast at least. So I want to drop a quick line today and talk about the recent hubbub that's come up regarding that documentary that Ron Howard is going to be making about this Chinese pianist named Lang, or Lang. That's this guy's name. And this thing became a story because, and I'll have the link in the description. Lulu Wang, the filmmaker, director, writer for The Farewell, is this Chinese American ride director, and this movie she did was based on this Chinese grandma and her family, and whatever. Like you can read about it, but it's called The Farewell. Anyways, so she made quite a name for herself with that movie because it was very well received. And didn't do too well overseas, but and she raises the issue about because this is like a story about a Chinese pianist, and therefore it could be a great opportunity for a Chinese American or Asian American filmmaker to do, instead of giving it to one of Hollywood's most famous directors, Ron Howard. Now, I had kind of a similar knee-jerk reaction to hers when I first heard the story. I was like, damn it, there goes another one. But then I looked a little closer, and so along this, I don't know much about like classical music or pianists. So this is the first time I'm hearing this guy. But apparently he's a pretty famous pianist from China. He was born in China, raised in China. He's Chinese. He's not Chinese American. He's not part of the quote unquote Asian diaspora. And so and he's not only the subject of this documentary, but he's also one of the producers. In fact, it looks like he might be the primary driver towards making this thing happen and seeking out like a director like Ron Howard. So ultimately, it's hard to justify bashing a movie or the situation when the subject of the documentary project is actually the ones pushing for this particular director. But I think this is a very teachable moment, teachable moment for Asian Americans out here. Is that, look, this just shows this disconnect between Asian Americans, the Asian diaspora, who do feel and face marginalization in Western media, versus how like a Chinese person who was born and raised in China feels about it. And as in, they don't really feel much about it because they're not the ones that feel marginalized or anything. They actually doing perfectly okay. And to them, they just want a big name director with the pedigree to do it. To us, it's like an opportunity lost. And I think it's interesting and important because there's no nicer way to say this. It's just like our issues that affect us as Asian Americans. Just the rest of the rest of Asia Pacific don't necessarily care about or know much about, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. People will characterize this to be a bad thing from the get-go, but it's not really, because my hands are getting tired, so that's why I have to switch hands. So it's like they're neutral, more or less. It's just they're not anti-representation. They don't feel like they're the ones who are being kind of pushed out or put aside. And I think it's really important to understand that discrepancy. And the fact that Lulu Wang probably I think she just made a knee-jerk reaction of this. It kind of reminds me of the situation where Constance Wu criticized that movie with Matt Damon and this gentleman named Pedro Pascal, who took part in that that Zhang Yimou movie from China a few years back called The Great Wall. And that one stunk for a different set of reasons. But so that movie was also pure on a Chinese production, pretty much all Chinese money, and they made the choice as a Chinese production to hire a bunch of basically the most famous and expensive Western above the line talent, like from actor to writer, screenwriter. I think Tony Gilroy was the one they took in. They brought on for that. The director was Zhang Yimou, the Chinese director, and one of the bigger female stars from China. So, that's Chinese decision making, and that is on them. And like you see, like we, like Asian Americans didn't really factor into that thing. And I want Asian Americans to really understand this. So, you can't expect, like, so when Lulu Wang came out with this criticism, why I understood it, and I almost had the same knee-jerk reaction. When I saw like what was happening, it seemed like the same situation as that, like Constance Wu criticizing the Great Wall. That's a Chinese project, not a Chinese American project, not an Asian American project, and not a Hollywood project. This has Hollywood name, Hollywood Ron Howard on it, but it's ultimately something that's initiated by a Chinese person who frankly don't know about our issues very well, or don't really care that much. It's not his fight per se. So, and here's another teachable aspect of this whole situation is that, you see, I'm not here to throw shade at Lulu Wang. I think she's a talented filmmaker, and I do hope for the best for her. But you see, like, she doesn't seem to understand this. She is like, directors, filmmakers, Asian American filmmakers like Lulu Wang will, like, there's a reason why The Farewell didn't do that well in China. And this is the article that I also linked down below, as from Variety. And I didn't actually read the article, but I have a pretty good idea why it didn't do well. And it's because, you see, like, projects like Crazy Rich Asians and like The Farewell, they're really aimed at like the Asian American experience, right? What it means to people like us in this society, and because of, just by virtue of the fact that we've been so marginalized, and kind of like you get like, a project that comes once every couple decades practically to be an Asian heavy cast, it's like a big deal and needs to be celebrated and validated and all this other stuff. And that's just something that's just not, like the average Asian person across Asia Pacific just don't care about, because they're not the ones who have to deal with the marginalization like that. So, and when you are an Asian American director, and you are in your entire career, you're trying to orient it towards delivering these kinds of stories. I'm not saying they're not valid, but these are very like a film like even like Crazy Rich Asians, The Farewell, and stuff like that, where like a big reason why they're kind of a big deal is because they're Asian heavy, is something that's not a big deal to anybody else but us. So when you're an Asian American director or filmmaker, and that's what you're doing, that's what you're going with, that's what you're spending all your time and money, realize that you're automatically narrowing your audience to a very small niche. You don't have a whole lot of like appeal outside of like the Asian Americans. And to be very quite blunt and honest with you, that's a dead end, okay? That's a dead end for the long term, because it even has limited appeal for Asian Americans like me. Like I respect what Lulu Wang did. I respect what Crazy Rich Asian was about to a certain degree, but they're not even of the genres I'm interested in. And they're definitely not of the genres that the Asia Pacific is interested in. They want more universal stories. They want to see more fun stuff, right? So, and I think one of the problems is that Asian Americans have been kind of like essentially pigeonholed into doing projects like this, because I'm not here to blame it on, again, I'm not here to blame Lulu Wang, I'm not here to blame Asian filmmakers, and you can make whatever kind of movies you want. But when I was in film school, I was told by a professor that, I respect, and I still respect, and he's like, I brought in this more or less this thing like action drama type project, where I basically created an Asian male character, and he said Asian characters just flat out don't sell. Don't even think about it. You need to change the character. And this wasn't any Asia Pacific. This was like a crime action drama. There was no Asian American specific bent to it. I knew quite a few lawyers who were freaking Asian Americans. Like, hey, this sounds makes perfect sense to me. And you see this kind of background happening where you have a generation of young Asian American storytellers and filmmakers who essentially have been, cowed and blinded, with the blinders on, to not even think about putting ourselves as creating stories that are like essentially action, adventure, big blockbuster franchises. Imagine ourselves as the main leading hero. But here's the brutal fucking truth, okay? Movies like fucking Mission Impossible and Fast and Furious and Transformers, what kind of movies are they? The mega massive blockbusters. And they sell extremely well in China. They do phenomenally well in Asia. Meanwhile, you have movies like The Farewell, You have more recent example in Mulan. I'm definitely gonna talk about that in a later video. You have a movie like Crazy Rich Asians, couldn't stand a fucking week in Asia, in China, without crashing out, and it made less than $1 million. Okay, so if you're an Asian American filmmaker, and all you're doing is generating projects like The Farewell, Crazy Rich Asians, that are Asian American specific because your priority is to be validated, you're actually doing Hollywood's bidding by conforming to what they imagine you should be. Hollywood wants to pigeonhole Asian Americans into these kind of specific Asian American culture roles instead of becoming the leading stars and characters of their own big blockbuster brand IPs. That is more general audience, that's more wide opening audience. Okay? And so when you're not creating things like that, things like Fast and Furious, things like Mission Impossible, and you're doing this stuff, realize that you will never be able to sell it that well. And ultimately, you see, the whole big picture thinking here is that this is about power. This is about money, okay? If you create a massive brand and you are generating a fuck ton of money, even if it's not even if it's not being sold expressly in the United States or in North America, but you have money, you're generating that kind of income. When you want to take some of that money and apply it towards like blockbuster projects, or rather towards more Asian American specific projects, you don't have to go beg Hollywood for money, and then they're going to be throwing you all sorts of negotiating bullshit. Oh, you need to change your character from this to white, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to fuck around with it, or you need to apply these, oh, it's not Asian enough. Bullshit like that. Okay, so this was a bit of a rant video, but I just want to get off my chest because I think, ultimately I think this whole situation with Lulu Wang and her take on this documentary situation kind of exposes a lot of the disconnect between Asian American priorities and Asia Pacific priorities. And ultimately, you understand, Asian Americans, if you're creating stuff that's narrow-banded appeal, you're always going to be begging other people for money, and therefore you're always going to have to fucking fold to what they want for you. Once you start asking for other people's money, they gotta have a say in how you present this shit, okay? And you understand right now the Asia Pacific, and this is a whole nother video, but like, Asia Pacific is already moving on from Hollywood. Trust me on this, okay? I have people on the ground, I watch these things, I look at these things. So if you're still trying to follow what Hollywood's leading you to do, what Hollywood tells that you're supposed to write and create, instead of creating these big, massive, like wide appeal properties and characters and set it for the long haul, you're gonna get left behind, like quite possibly for good. Or rather, it's gonna take you a lot longer to get caught up. Right now, there's more or less an open field in like the increasingly globalized entertainment marketplace. Okay, there's stuff coming out of China like Black Myth Wukong that garners so much appeal from all the Western audiences around the planet. You got to look at the video game market to get an idea of how the world actually sees entertainment, because Hollywood's bullshit is actually pretty fucking skewed, and it's going to do you no favors to follow their lead, because they're not about leading, they're about maintaining their status as the gatekeepers and tastemakers, and who they want to be hero, who they want to see as the main leads in the biggest stories. So again, bit of a rant video. I have so many things I want to talk about, but so to end on a positive note, and I think I just touched on that, this whole fucking thing with this documentary and Ron Howard getting it, and whatever the case, whichever side you fall on this argument, oh, it should have happened, it shouldn't happen, or whatever, realize that the whole fucking thing is a crumb. This is still crumb, okay? This is still a case where we're here, or you are fighting over this little piece of thing that you thought, hey, it's like a real scarcity kind of like mentality, okay? And I'm not discounting the issues that Asian Americans faced, but you understand, this is still, like, you're still fighting. If you're fighting on this hill, you're still fighting over a crumb. Whereas if your angle, like me, is to basically create brand new IPs, create brand new humongous brands and and awesome characters and entire universes that feature ourselves as by default and not as, oh, that little niche of Asian Americans, all right, that's the whole fucking cake. that's a baking the big ass cake. Don't fucking fight for the little crumb, because that's what this is. All right, so again, long rant video. I might touch up on it a little bit, but do forgive me if I don't edit it. Anyways, I hope you all having a great Friday. It's a nice weekend out here. Stay safe, keep healthy, and see you guys in the next one. And just check back to the channel. Oh yeah, and definitely help me out with the channel, like and subscribe. I'm trying to reach, like, I know it's sad it sounds to say, but I'm trying to reach 100 subscribers right now. Haven't been too diligent. Okay, so yeah, check back for more content. But yeah, I want to get this off my chest. I hope you guys having a great weekend.